Marcy, let me know when you're recording.
We're good. Go ahead.
So good morning. My name is Ernesto Machado. I've been with Qdabra for 5 years as a tester and InfoPath support and product support and many other roles. Today I'm here to talk to you about how to protect your forms data with document locks. So there are going to be two main aspects we're going to talk about. Number one is the scenario when your form is stored in SharePoint. We're going to talk about checking in and checking out your form. And we're also going to talk about the scenario when your form is stored in DBXL. And for DBXL, we have locking and unlocking of documents. So because these are similar scenarios, we're going to cover both of those in today's webinar. We use GoToMeeting for this webinar. If you're not listening, if you're not hearing me, then there might be a problem with your audio, but don't worry, we record these so you can take a look at the video afterwards. We're going to have some questions and answers at the end. If you haven't used GoToMeeting in the past, there is an option on your GoToMeeting panel to ask questions and to chat, so we can use that. Oh, this is going too fast. Okay. So like I mentioned in my overview, at the beginning of the presentation, we're going to talk about SharePoint's check-in and check-out feature. We're going to talk about DBXL lock and unlock. At the end of the webinar, if you have registered, we have a webinar goodies that we send out at the end. So I will send you some links. I will send you some sample forms that you can take a look at for reference as far as what we were discussing here. So what is check-in and check-out? So if you used SharePoint in the past, you know that the user who checked out the file is the only one who's allowed to make changes. So essentially that user is locking the file so that nobody else can make changes while that person is making changes. The form's going to remain checked out until that user releases it by checking it in. And if you go to a SharePoint form library, which we'll go to briefly, you'll see that there's a checked out to column in the form library, and that allows you to see the name of the person who has checked out the form, who currently has it locked out, and who is currently editing the form. So how do you use this? You can check out a form using the ribbon. So if you go to you check the checkbox for the document you want to check out, and you go to the ribbon, to the Documents tab, you will see there's a checkout option. That might be a little cumbersome for users to remember. You know, you have to go in and check out the document before you will modify it. You can also expand the menu for each of the items in the form library, and there is a checkout option for each of the items, so you can check it out that way. The other option, which we're going to show here in this webinar, is that you can check out the form from the form itself. You can actually have buttons, data connections, you know, form rules and logic that you can actually check out the form and check it in. And I have listed here a blog post, bonus blog post that you can check out afterwards that actually shows you how to check out the form automatically. The steps are going to be fairly similar to what we're going to show here for the buttons, checking in and checking out. So I'm going to exit out of PowerPoint for a second and head to my SharePoint site. And I've already built this, since building it would take up a few minutes here. We only have limited time. And what I have here is a form library on SharePoint 2010. And I have a document that I have submitted. So I'm going to open that document. It's going to open in the browser. And if I open another tab and head to that same location, to that same form library, you're going to see that checked out to is blank. So I have opened the document, but it's not checked out to me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click the checkout button. And that tells me that I have successfully checked out this form. So if I refresh the form library, it's going to show that it's checked out to me. Okay, so supposing that we have some fields here that I make some changes, then I would submit. Let's say that I don't want to make any changes and I just change my mind and I want to check it in. So I click on check in. So that contacts the server that checks in the form, and if I return to the form library, it's going to show the checked out column blank. So it's no longer checked in to me. No longer checked in, checked out to my name. So that allows you to control check in, check out. That gives your users a very powerful control here, deciding when they want to check out the form, make changes, submit. If they change their mind, they can click check out, check in. And like I said, I'm including in the slides a link to a blog post that will show you how to do this automatically in your form. So why is this called check-in, check-out XTP sample form? So let me show you. We have a check-in, check-out XTP, which we are using in this form, and we can reuse for any other form that we want to perform the same functionality. So we don't have to recreate it in every form that we design. So here's the, oh, I opened the wrong one, sorry. Let me show you the template part. So here's the XTP. It's very simple, it doesn't have much. It just has a calculated value to show the users a message, and it has the checkout buttons, check-in buttons, and it has a lot of rules here. If you've signed up for the webinar, you'll get this, and you'll be able to take a look at all the logic on the buttons and all the rules here. So the advantage here, and I've included a little appendix here for the for this concept is why do we use XML template parts? And I'll let you go through these slides, but the benefit is that you basically design this once. You basically design your template part once, and then you can reuse that in other forms. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. The InfoPath Dev website has a blog post that describes how to create this XTP. So even though you're going to get the XTP in the package, you're going to get this XTP in the package. If we take a look at the XTP, you're going to see that it's coded, it's using data connections on our site right here. But you can design this template part. It's not too complicated. It might take you 20 minutes to design it, and then you can reuse it in all of your forms. And we have those steps up on our website. Now, locking and unlocking in DBXL is similar to checking in and checking out. Basically, it's the concept of locking a document so that only one user is authorized to make changes. And when that user is done, you can check it in. You can unlock the document. So that means that users are not stepping on each other's toes. This is important in DBXL simply for user experience. DBXL is smart enough to not allow your changes to go through if the document is locked. So there's a screenshot here at the bottom. This screenshot, this dialog message that you see here at the bottom of my screen, that's the message that you see when you try to open a form, a DBXL form, that is already opened by another user. So DBXL is smart enough. It says, you cannot open this form. You don't have adequate permission. The user has the form open. Do you want to open a read-only copy of the form? And you can go ahead and open a read-only copy of the form. And just because the form is read-only, maybe the submit button is still active. Maybe there's a submit button or a save button somewhere in the form that your users will just make changes to the form and submit, even though we told them, hey, this is a read-only copy of the form. So adding a lock and unlock functionality to the form just makes the user experience a little better, just improves the user experience a little. So let me show you that in action. I'm going to head out to DBXL, and I have a document type that has been created, and I have a document that has been submitted. So this document type already has a form, so I'm just going to open that form. So if you tried now to open the same link, you're going to get that message from the screenshot saying, somebody else already has it open, do you want to open it in read-only mode? But our aim is to improve the user experience, is to make our forms smarter. So the way we're going to do that is through the conditional formatting in our form. Unless you check out the form, the submit button is going to be disabled. So right here, it's enabled because I have the form open, right? So if somebody else opened this form, the submit button would be disabled because they haven't locked it. They don't have it locked to their name. So basically, if I come here and I lock, and I think I have this backwards, but it's the same, sort of the same concept. Yeah, I had this logic backwards, but that's okay. We can fix that really quick. I'm just going to attach my latest form here. And I have to let InfoPath this is a little quirky behavior of InfoPath 2010. It doesn't immediately detect that there's a new version of the form. It sort of thinks and then it gives you this yellow bar, so that's okay. We let it go through its process so we can reopen the form, and here it is. So I'll just submit a new form here. You can see that I don't have lock and unlock available because that's not applicable for new forms. There's no way you can lock a new form. So I've submitted that. I'm going to go find that document that I just submitted, open it. And when it opens, submit is disabled. So I'm basically forcing the users to lock the document and then submit. And if they change their mind and they want to discard their changes, they can unlock, and the submit button becomes disabled. So what we're trying to avoid is this scenario where the form opens as read-only, and there might be a read-only warning here next to this top bar that says Microsoft InfoPath. But the user might not pay attention to that. The user might not see that. So we control that in the form, and we say, well, if the form is not locked, then you can't submit it, period. And if you lock it, then you can submit it. So let me show you once InfoPath responds. There we go. So let me show you the template part, because of course I want to reuse this in other forms. So I've created a template part for DBXL lock and unlock, and it looks fairly similar to check-in, check-out. I have a calculated value that's going to show a message, and I have my lock and my unlock buttons, and I have some rules, some logic associated to those, of course. And let me show you the actual finished form in design mode, just to show you what I'm doing here with the submit button. I'm basically disabling it if it's not locked. So it's fairly simple. So you're basically looking for a Boolean flag called locked, and if it's locked, then you let the user submit, and if it's not locked, then just stop them from submitting. So it really just improves the user experience. It just visually warns the user the submit button is disabled, so you can't submit. You don't have the lock on that document. So that I went by really fast over the DBXL aspect. So if you're not a DBXL user, that might be a little confusing. But we have Qdabra offers training, and one of the next training offerings that's coming up is next week. The DBXL training, I will be conducting that from Tuesday to Friday next week from 9 to 11:30 a.m. Pacific. And if you own a DBXL license, if you own any type of DBXL license, and it's free for you to attend, and we'll go over all sorts of functionality in DBXL, some that you might already be using and some that might be new to you. But that's the beauty of the training, is that you already own this product, so let us show you how you can make full use of it. Maybe there's a feature that you haven't discovered, so you can find out about it during this training. We also offer InfoPath Masterclass training and InfoPath 101 trainings. Sadly, the Curios training is happening this week, so if you're not in it, then I'm sorry, but you've missed it. Maybe we can sign you up for the next one, the next time around. Just email coursemanager@qdabra.com. The email is there at the bottom of the slide, and you can get more information, and you can sign up for any of these training labs. Let me exit PowerPoint so I can take a look at any questions that might have come up. Okay, I don't see any questions. I don't see any chat. So let me just go to these appendix slides. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them up on the GoToMeeting panel. The XML template parts, as I was saying earlier, they're going to allow you to create a basic piece of functionality that you plan on reusing again and again in your forms. So we did that for check-in, check-out, and the blog post is available on our website. And we did that for the DBXL lock and unlock XTP. And you basically just reuse that XTP, that template part, as many times as you would like, and as many templates as you would like. So as I said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. You just drag and drop, and you make you reuse that functionality. The limitations, as you gain more experience with the creation and management of XTPs, you gain more insight into the possible limitations. One limitation is that they add nodes to your data source. So if you are keeping a very strict data source and you add an XTP, it's going to add some groups, it's going to add some nodes, so you might have some bindings to clean up, or some names, some fields to rename. When you add an XTP, there's an issue where if you have two nodes that have the same name, it's going to add a suffix. So that's valid in two scenarios. The first scenario is that you already have a node in your form, and there's a node by that same name in the XTP, or you add the XTP twice. So the general principle is just not to add the XTP twice. And perhaps the biggest limitation, those are little limitations that any little bit of design work can overcome, but the biggest limitation is that if you update an XTP, if you go into your XTP and you make a design change, it's not going to propagate into your forms. So you have to remove the XTP from InfoPath, and you have to re-add it, and you have to modify your forms. So that gets a little tricky if your XTPs are going to be changing. But if your XTPs are fixed and there's no expectation that they'll be changing, then the XTPs are going to be with you for a long time. You might ask yourself about the DBXL XTP. That is not up on the website. So this is sort of the incentive. If you have signed up and attended the webinar, then we have this document right here. It hasn't been published. It's not out in the public yet. So you can get this through the webinar freebies, and it's going to show you step by step. It's about 10 pages. It's going to show you step by step how to create the XDP that's going to lock and unlock DBXL forms. So let me see if there are any questions.
Ernesto, can I just say, please fill out the feedback form that will pop up at the end of the webinar if you want to receive the samples.
Okay, thank you, Marcy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see any questions. So I'll say a few words about the DBXL scenario. The real benefit to locking and unlocking, let me open this again, is that when you have DBXL forms, your users are probably not going to be opening the forms from the DBXL admin tool like I just did. Your users might receive a link in email, or they might most likely open it through a SharePoint mapping. So if you're SharePoint mapping to a form library, then the users might open it from there. And if you have a browser form, then we're starting to get into this scenario of, is the form checked out in SharePoint? Is the form locked in DBXL? So if you're in that scenario where your DBXL form is mapped to a SharePoint form library, then you really want to look at this lock and unlock option. And the reason is this. When you have a DBXL to SharePoint mapping, DBXL stores the, how can I say it, the central, the XML, the parent XML, while the SharePoint library is just storing a copy. So the SharePoint form library just has a copy of whatever DBXL has. So what does this mean? This means that if a user goes into the SharePoint form library and checks out the document, it's not a really valid scenario because the form doesn't care whether it's locked in SharePoint. What matters is the DBXL lock in that scenario. So in that browser form SharePoint DBXL scenario, then this lock unlock functionality really becomes useful to make sure that even though your user opened the form from SharePoint, even though they didn't click checkout, even though it's in the browser, your users are still locking that form and getting the right permission so they can make changes and submit. And of course, after the user submits, DBXL takes care of pushing out any changes into the form library. So your users, that's why your users don't have to worry about check-in or check-out in SharePoint, because DBXL takes care of that. As long as you have your DBXL lock, of course. Okay, well, it's almost 1:30. Let me check the questions. In DBXL, does using submit automatically unlock the form? When you open the form from DBXL, like I have done, there is a lock that is generated automatically in the scenario that I have shown, right, where I'm opening it from the DBXL admin tool, opening the form in InfoPath, not in the browser. So there is a lock that is generated, and when you submit, the unlock does happen automatically. Why is the lock and unlock? Why are the lock and unlock buttons important? They are important in high volume scenarios. So let's say that you have many users updating a few forms. Then in that scenario, what if somebody opens the form, makes some changes, goes off to get lunch, leaves the form open for an hour, 90 minutes, and during that time somebody else makes changes? That's when we get into these strange scenarios. that's why we have this suggestion of, why if you check for the lock right before you submit? And if there's a problem, right, if you open the form and left it open for 90 minutes, it could happen that somebody else got a lock after your lock expired. So your lock, you open the form, you step away from your machine becomes idle, the lock expires, and then somebody else locks the form. So that way when you come back to your InfoPath form and you click lock document, it's going to say, I can't lock it because somebody else already has it locked. So it's not for every scenario, right? But it is there for those scenarios where you have a lot of people using the form and you want to prevent overwrites, accidental overwrites. But yes, to answer your question, in a generic DBXL scenario, DBXL does release the lock when you submit. Okay, I don't see any other questions, but I will put up this slide here. This has the course manager email at the bottom. You can always contact us through that email, send us feedback about the webinars, suggest any future topics you would like to see covered, ask about the training classes, etc. Like Marcy said, don't forget to fill out the questionnaire that you're going to get at the end of this session. And thank you for attending our webinar. We hope to see you next week as well.